A few weeks ago, I requested IELTS speaking candidates submit an MP3 of themselves responding to this cue card. Today, I would like to listen to these MP3 files and provide these candidates with some feedback on their speaking. Just for full transparency, I am not a practicing IELTS speaking examiner. The feedback I am providing today is using the public band descriptors chart, which is available online at IELTS.org. Also, please note that this feedback is based solely on the Part 2 sample that these candidates have provided. So it's an assessment of their ability to speak at length by themselves, and this may differ from their ability to speak with others, as they would be doing in Parts 1 and 3. We are going to listen to these submissions in order of strength, so I will play the strongest submission first and move our way down to the less strong submissions. Before we get started, I just want to thank those people that submitted samples, and I want to say that I admire your bravery, and I hope you find this feedback today helpful to your speaking development. I'm not going to share the names of these candidates, but I will identify their geographical region to help us discuss some of the pronunciation challenges that are common to that region. Okay, so let's read the cue card just to refresh our memory. The cue card says, talk about something that helps you save time. Please say what it is, when you use it, why you use it, and explain why you believe it helps you save time. Okay, so let's listen to the first candidate. I believe this person is from Southeast Asia. This is the strongest submission I received. Okay, here it is.
The thing that came to mind that helps me save time a lot is my diary. It's an A5 dark yellow notebook that my friend gave me as a gift on my 21st birthday. I'd say I can't live without it because I use it every day. I write every negative thought on the paper because I believe that expressing my thoughts that way can really help me to get everything out and focus more on the present, real problems instead of wasting too much time overthinking something that I actually make up or spice up. Also, I'm in the habit of planning the next day ahead with my journal. Sometimes I find myself struggling to prioritizing things, especially when there's a lot going on in my life. And planning my day with my journal helps me to keep track of everything. And I tend to break down my work into small tasks, and each task is attached to a specific amount of time. And next day, I just stick to what I've planned, and it gives me a lot more time to get important tasks done. So, I really confide in my journal, though it sounds a little bit traditional to write by hand these days, but I'll still keep this habit because it really works for me.
So this is a very strong speaking sample. The candidate clearly links their ideas and demonstrates clear and accurate progression to the response with no repetition at all. Just to share some specific areas of strength, the candidate uses phrases like, I can't live without it, I'm in the habit of, so this is a phrase that they use to talk about their routine, sometimes I find myself, and this is a helpful phrase to mention an occasional situation. And another phrase they use is works for me, which is a good phrase to use to describe a practice or a process that you find helpful. Other impressive language the candidate uses includes overthinking, tend to break down, confide in, and write by hand. So I think there's a lot of really strong and accurately used language items here. The performance does include some minor errors that we should discuss. So, for example, they should have used the past form of made up because they are referring to something and not a habitual experience. The phrase spice up is used inaccurately here. Spice up means more to enhance something, where I think in this instance the candidate meant more exaggerate or dwell on. They also use the word prioritizing when speaking about something habitual, so this should have been the present simple prioritize. The word everything's should be everything, and there is a missing article before next day, so this area should be the next day. Make sure that you review the TH sound. So words like without, we should hear that TH without, and other words like thoughts. And I think in the demonstration there, it sounded like there was an R sound almost in there. So it's not thoughts, it's thoughts. And the L sound, like when pronouncing the word real. So be careful with that final L sound because I think it was sounding more like an R. So it's not rear, it's real. Unfortunately, some of these moments cause some mild difficulty for the listener. So I think pronunciation must be placed at about band 7. But I would say that this is on the cusp of band 8. Okay, grammatical range and accuracy matches the band 7 descriptor, frequently produces error-free sentences, though some grammatical mistakes persist. I think this is quite accurately mapped to what we saw today. Fluency and lexical resources are 8, and these areas are only held back by the occasional language or pronunciation inaccuracies that we talked about earlier, because these inaccuracies do cause some very mild coherence issues. So the listener does understand what you're saying, but there is some mild strain that has to be acknowledged here. So I hope that feedback helps you improve your language further. As I said, this is a very strong speaking sample, and I think you did a really good job of carrying on the conversation and bringing up new and fresh ideas without repeating yourself. Well done, and I look forward to seeing another submission from you in the future. Let's go ahead and listen to the next highest sample, which I believe is once again from Southeast Asia.
Well, one item that helps me save time that immediately popped up into my mind is my oven. Actually, I just bought my oven a few weeks ago, before I had been struggling with cooking. Because to be perfectly honest with you, cooking is not my forte, and which is why it usually takes me ages to cook, just one dish. But at the same time, my hectic schedule means that I don't have that much time to spend in the kitchen, so my oven just came in handy. Well, as for how often I use it, I suppose I use it almost every day without fail. I work out in a gym like 4 or 5 times a week, so I have to take in enough nutrients. So I have to cook every day. Besides going to the gym, I have to eat at home. And this oven is really convenient. I just need to prepare some vegetables, some protein like beef and chicken, and then I just need to throw everything in together and see what comes out. What's really funny is sometimes I just by winging it, I can come up with something really good. Since the day I bought the oven, I don't have to be bothered about what to eat or how much time I have to cook every day. So, it's just like a lifesaver for me.
Okay, so again, this is a very strong response. The candidate does a very good job of describing the object from different perspectives, and they use some helpful phrases and idiomatic language to do so. Some examples of this strong language include, to be perfectly honest with you, is not my forte, at the same time, which is a phrase he uses to share supporting information. Another strong phrase is without fail, which is a phrase to describe something that you always do. And what's really funny, which is a phrase for describing something interesting. The phrase winging it, which is a phrase to describe making something without following a plan. Also, the candidate uses don't have to be bothered, and a lifesaver. And a lifesaver is something extremely helpful to you. So you can see that the candidate does a good job of using expressive phrases to clearly describe the role the oven plays in their life. And they are almost always coherent throughout this demonstration, which is great. So let's look at some areas to improve. Firstly, there is clear repetition, and the candidate is clearly searching for language at times. So when I look at the band descriptors, this fits clearly at the Band 7 level for fluency and coherence. There are a few pronunciation errors that the candidate should work on. So words like hectic, and it's not hetic. We need to hear that C in the middle, hectic. So just review that word. And nutrients. So I think in the demonstration, it was pronounced nugients. We want to hear the R in the middle, nutrients, nutrients. And we're stressing the first syllable, nutrients. And another word to work on is cooking. So we have that double O, which sometimes throws people off a little bit. You have to be careful not to let it be a ooh sound. It's not cooking, it's cooking, cooking, cooking. And there seem to be quite a few fillers in this demonstration. So the candidate often uses sounds like and which act as indicators that the candidate is searching for language. Also, they can sometimes confuse the listener because it almost sounds like you're saying an article, like the word ah. So for example, at one point the candidate says 4 or 5, so they say 4 or 5. And I think they said like UH, a 4 or 5, but it sounds like they're saying the article 4 or 5, which could be mistaken for a grammatical error. So my advice to you is to really try to reduce these fillers to the extent that you can. And because the clarity is impacted at times, I think the descriptors at the Band 6 are most fitting for pronunciation. But I would say this is a high Band 6, and with a little work you could easily bump this up to Band 7. So let's go to grammar. So there are occasional grammatical issues. So for example, some ideas run on a little bit, like when you say, you know, before I had been struggling with cooking because, to be perfectly honest with you, cooking is not my forte, which is why it usually takes ages to cook, just one dish. But at the same time, my hectic schedule means that I don't have that much time to spend in the kitchen. So my oven came in handy. I think that separating the ideas would make them a little clearer. So let me give you an example of how to break up this area and make it a little bit clearer to your listener what the different points are in this area. So you could have said, before I bought this item, I struggled with cooking because, to be perfectly honest with you, cooking is not my forte. It usually takes me ages to cook just one dish, and at the same time, my hectic schedule means I don't have much time to spend in the kitchen. My oven really was the key to solving these problems. So if you can hear the way that I've kind of broken that up instead of having everything run on and, when things are just connected, but there isn't a whole lot of logic to the way that they're being connected, it can be confusing to the listener. So sometimes it's helpful just to break things up a little bit and make sure that the listener understands the different ideas that you're sharing. Just to be clear, I think your efforts to use connectives like and, which, but, and so are great, but the overuse is what makes your thoughts a little bit difficult to follow. Also, the modal can should be followed with the infinitive come and not came. So that's just another grammatical item just to have a look at and review. I feel you are capable of producing complex sentence structures, but these regularly contain some mild wording errors. So the Band 6 descriptor may make frequent mistakes with complex structures, though these rarely cause comprehension problems, is fitting here. If we look at your lexical resources, these are clearly strong, but I feel there is some uncertainty at times in your speaking, and some of the and fillers impact the accuracy of your lexical resources. So the Band 7 descriptor with some inappropriate choices is fitting here. Okay, I hope that feedback is helpful. Thank you very much for submitting this sample, and I really look forward to getting another sample from you in the future, because I think fixing some of these areas will produce real improvement for you quite quickly. Okay, let's have a listen to the next submission. I believe this next submission is from South Asia. Let's have a listen.
Today I would like to talk about an equipment which I use in my house, and I use them for different purposes. And it is the vacuum cleaner that not only had saved my time and had made my life very easier. I usually clean the house, I think 2 to 3 times a week. Cleaning the whole house and furniture was very time consuming and difficult. Now I can make it had not only make it easier, but also had made my life, I'm able to save my time, and I'm able to utilize the more time on my fitness and to do many hobbies. Like before purchasing, I think this cleaning the house was very tiresome and tough task. So this instrument is very handy, and I'm able to clean the house neat and able to keep my house neat and clean. So it was approximately 250 pounds, and it does dry as well as wet cleaning. So means like cleaning, mopping means I usually suffered from backache because we have to mop the floor by bending. So now I'm able to keep myself very fit, and also it's a matter of 10 minutes. I am able to save a lot of time. So I think it's an important tool for me, and it does very important tasks of our home. So this equipment, I think it had make my life very happier, and also it turns the house, means the house, to keeping the house spick and span. It's a very Herculean task, and it's very tough job for the everyone to spend more time on it. So I think this this equipment has made my life very easier.
This sample very clearly declares what the item is, which is great. They share a few ideas to explain how the vacuum cleaner accelerates their ability to clean their home and gives them time for other activities, but they repeat themselves a lot, and they seem to have trouble finding the words they need to express themselves. We can see here that every sentence contains lots of filler sounds. So I think that despite speaking quickly and sounding quite fluent because of the speed with which they're speaking, it's sort of an illusion. The candidate isn't really communicating their ideas clearly, and this is made worse by the fact that they seem to jump from one topic to another without demonstrating accurate use of connectives to show how these ideas relate to each other or even how they progress. So just to give some examples, we see the topics of how often they clean, how difficult it is, once again how difficult it is, how much the vacuum cost and its functions, the health issues that occurred before buying the vacuum, how the vacuum is a form of exercise, how the vacuum contributes to their happiness, and then once again how difficult cleaning is. So I think some better organization is really needed in this response. And when it comes to describing the fluency and the coherence, the candidate sort of hits markers between Band 4 and Band 6. So for example, one descriptor at the Band 6 level that describes this kind of speaking is willing to speak at length, though may lose coherence at times due to occasional repetition, self-correction, or hesitation. And I think that even the word occasional, in this candidate's instance, it's much more often than just occasional. So there's a ton of repetition in this response. So this descriptor is only partially fitting. If we look down to Band 4, there is a descriptor that fits. It says, links basic sentences, but with repetitious use of simple connectives and some breakdown in coherence. So I think this is quite accurate, where the candidate is using simple connectives, repeating them over and over, and this is causing some coherence issues. So somewhere between these descriptors is where I think the candidate would place. There is little demonstration of phrases or idiomatic understanding, and the sentences seem to repeat the same small grouping of words. So I think that this would place at about a band 4 for lexical resources. In the grammatical range and accuracy area, the candidate habitually uses the past perfect where they should have been using the present perfect. So it should be that has not only saved my time and made my life easier. And another example is it has not only made it easier, but also has made my life, and then onwards. And then one more example is it has made my life easier. So I think reviewing the present perfect and when to use that versus the past perfect would be really helpful for this candidate. The candidate also attempts some complex structures, but the candidate tends to shift the topic of what they're speaking about in the middle of the sentence. So it's difficult to know to what degree the candidate is able to accurately use complex structures. I feel the descriptor errors are frequent and may lead to misunderstanding is accurate here at the band 4 level. The candidate's pronunciation is quite strong, and I'm trying not to be biased because I personally have always liked the South Asian accent, but I think this band 6 descriptor is fitting when it says can generally be understood throughout, though mispronunciation of individual words or sounds reduces clarity at times. So to this candidate, I would advise a few things. Firstly, slow down your speaking and try to focus clarifying your ideas before you say them. A second thing to work on is you should train to reduce the and in your speech, because you can see here in the transcript that these items are throughout the sample. And as I mentioned before, I would advise the candidate reviews the present simple and present perfect and how these are different from the past perfect. So I think that if you do these 3 things, it will really help you to have an incredibly productive month as you work on your speaking. So focus in these areas, and I really want to thank you for submitting this sample, and I hope you will submit another one in the future so we can see the improvement that occurs when you focus on these areas. Okay, our last submission, I believe, is from East Asia. Let's have a listen now.
Well, making a daily plan can help me save a lot of time in my daily life. Every morning when I wake up, I always like to organize my schedule and think about what I need to do in this day, and I will spend how many time to study and part-time job. Also I will plan what I need to buy in the supermarket. I especially buy a notebook to write down them. I think it is clearly to see my plans, and I can review and summary when this week ends. Before I like to use my mobile phone to schedule my daily life, but every time when I want to check them or change my schedule, but I always pay attention on another application like social media. I think it is a waste of time. So when I started use paper to schedule, I think it is better. And recently, when I finished my all plans, I feel so confident and feel so happy, and I have a lot of confidence to start another day. I think I will still use notebook to write down my schedule and my plans.
So this submission does a few things very well. For one, the candidate clearly declares their schedule as the thing that helps them save time. And they develop this by sharing reasons that explain when and why they use it. So their responses to these areas are they use it every morning. And to answer the why, they say what I need to buy in the supermarket. And they say see my plans. So these are the reasons that they're using it. I think the candidate needs to work on their grammar a bit because pretty much all sentences contain an error, and these errors often impact the candidate's coherence. So, for example, the candidate improperly uses or omits articles at times, such as a daily plans instead of just daily plans, and I will still use notebook instead of a notebook. So I think articles are an area the candidate should review, and also certain prepositions are used improperly, such as a lot of time. In this day should be that day. Pay attention on should be pay attention to. I finished my all plans should be finished all of my plans. And there are numerous other grammatical errors. I will point out a few now. The candidate says, I will spend how many time. So this should be how much time I will need. There also seems to be some confusion around when to use the noun, verb, adjective, or adverb form of a word. So for example, I think it is clearly to see my plans should be I think it clarifies my plans. I can review and summary should be I can review and summarize. At one point, the candidate uses two buts very closely together, which makes it difficult to follow the meaning. So they say, but every time when I want to check them or change my schedule, but I always pay attention, which is confusing. I think most listeners would be confused by this wording. I started use paper should be I started using paper. I feel so confident should be the adjective I feel so confident. So I think the grammatical problems really impact the coherence of this response. And I would say the descriptor errors are frequent and may lead to misunderstanding would be a fitting description of this level of speaking in the grammatical range and accuracy column. For fluency, links basic sentences but with repetitious use of simple connectives and some breakdown in coherence would fit. The candidate also has some trouble demonstrating an ability to be flexible with their vocabulary. So in other words, they attempt to use a varied lexical pool, but errors in word choice are frequent. And at times, the listener doesn't know what they are talking about, to be honest with you. So for example, there's a random reference to a part-time job. And when I hear you say this, I'm not really sure what you're talking about. I'm presuming you're talking about your own part-time job, but I'm not sure how this links to the other ideas that appear around it. Also, at one point, there is a notebook to write down the, and then the what. It doesn't really say, what's being referred to here. I'm not totally sure what the candidate means when they say summary when this week. So for lexical resources, I would say the descriptor that best matches this level is manages to talk about familiar and unfamiliar topics, but uses vocabulary with limited flexibility. And also the descriptor is able to talk about familiar topics, but can only convey basic meaning on unfamiliar topics and makes frequent errors in word choice. And if we look at pronunciation, I think this is a clear weak area for this candidate. I might be wrong, but I believe this candidate is from China. And because I've lived there, I know some of the common pronunciation challenges that occur for students of IELTS in China. And so one of these is learning to put emphasis on different parts of the sentence in English. And this is different from Chinese, where the stress is much more on individual words. So a very common pronunciation problem for Chinese speakers of English is that often people sound a bit robotic because the sentence is delivered in a monotone voice. And what I mean by that is there's very little intonation. So the sound of the person's voice does not go up or down. And when you listen to people that are skilled in speaking English, it's actually quite a musical language. It's always going up and down. If you listen to the way I'm speaking now, it's going up and down. I think my suggestion to you is that the next time you do a shadowing exercise, try to focus on the way the sentence sounds as a whole and focus on the musical nature of the sentence. Listen for, where parts of the sentence go up in intonation and come down. Also, just to give you some specific pronunciation areas to work on, the TH is a problem. So at one point, this candidate says, think about my schedule. And it's quite clear that they say think about my schedule, like as if that TH is an S. So we need to hear that think, right? We want to put our tongue between our teeth. Think about my schedule. Okay, some other areas to look at. Unfortunately, some parts of the response are difficult to understand because of pronunciation errors. And you can see that I've had to mark some areas in the transcript with question marks because I'm not really clear on what was said. So I feel these pronunciation challenges match the descriptor for mispronunciations are frequent and cause some distress for the listener. Okay, I hope that feedback is helpful to you, and I'm not trying to discourage you at all because I think you're a very skilled speaker, but I want to give you honest feedback so that you can improve your speaking. And if you know that these are areas that you must focus on, and you take the next few weeks to really hammer them down, I guarantee the next time I get a sample from you, it will be noticeably better. Okay, once again, I would like to thank these 4 people for sharing their speaking samples, and I hope this feedback is helpful to you. Remember to visit IELTSSpeakingblog.com, where you can find a library of shadowing exercises to use to practice your speaking. Thank you very much for watching, and please join me next time for another IELTS speaking video.